Namam Isvaram Satchit Anandarupam Lasat Kundalam Go Kule Brajamanam Yashoda Biolukalat Davamanam Param Atyanta Todrucha Gopya Rudantam Moha Netra Yugmam Mijantam Taram Bhojayukmena Satanka Netram Muhu Swasa Kampa Chire Kanka Kanta Stita Gribam Damodaram Bhakti Badam Iti Driksalila Bir Ananda Kunde Swagosham Nimajantam Akyapayantam Tadi Eshita Geshu Bhakta Jitatvam Una Prema Tastam Shata Priti Vande Varam Deva Moksham Namoksha Vadimba Nachanyam Vraneham Pareshada Piha Idam Teva Purnata Gopala Balam Sada Memanyastya Virastam Kimanyai Idam te mukam bojam achantanilai Vritam kuntalai snigda raktaischa gopya Muhushchumbitang bimba raktadharang me Manasya virastam alam lakshalabai Namo Deva Damoda Ananta Vishnu Prasida Prabodhuka Jalabdimagnam Kripa Dristi Vrisyati Dinambatanu Girihanesha Mam Agyam Ejaksha Drishya Kuber Atmajo Bada Murchai Vayatvat Kaya Mochito Bhakti Bhajau Kitau Cha Tata Prema Bhaktim Swakame Priyacha Namokshe Graho Mesti Damodareha Namaste Stu Damne Spura Deepti Damne Twaidi Yodarayata Vishvasya Damne Namo Radhikaya Twadi Apriyaya Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam Namo Radhikaya Twadi Apriyaya Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam Namo Radhikaya Twadi Apriyaya Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Hare Ramo Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Ganachimidandasya, Gananjana, Shalakaya, Chakshurmilitan Yena, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Today we'll continue with our Damodarastic discussion, and we'll do that by turning to the 10th canto, keeping in mind verse number 2 of Damodarastic. We want to focus on what happened after Mother Yasoda put child Krishna down. The last time we discussed this, you may recall that we discussed up until that point how the whole Leela began, why Mother Yasoda put him down rather than carry him with her as she raced to the stove to rescue the boiling milk. Remember, she calculated that if she raced to the stove carrying him, she wouldn't have been quick enough. So, for the sake of preserving Krishna's wealth, the special milk from special cows and Braj, all meant for his pleasure, to preserve his wealth, she put him down and raced to the stove without him. And so we spoke last time also about how spiritual intelligence gives you the ability to discern what to do next for Krishna. That is the essential meaning of the Bhagavad Gita verse, Tesham Satayuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam Tadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yena Mama Payantite. Krishna says, I give my devotee the intelligence, how he can come to me, how he can come closer to me. So there's no fault, of course, in what Mother Yashoda did. But Krishna sees the whole incident as an opportunity to become chastised by her, by his making mischief. You may recall, and we raised the point the last time, that Krishna ate dirt or seemed to eat dirt. He did mischief as Muckenchor, breaking into people's houses, stealing milk products. But Mother Yashoda never chastised him, even when the elder gopis reported Krishna's mischief to her. Everyone just looked at little Krishna's face and just became mesmerized, hypnotized. So Krishna wanted to feel the chastisement of his mother's love. He wants the full spectrum of possibilities in the Vatsalya Prem, the pure love of Mother Yashoda. So she took down the milk, the boiling milk from the stove. And what had Krishna done in the meantime? In her absence, he was angry. I don't know if you've been angry enough that you bit your lips with your teeth. Any of you? But little Krishna, this is Balya Leela, his childhood pastimes, was the perfection of childish anger. He bit his lips with his teeth, his eyes filled with tears. Now, there's a debate about the tears in the eye. How false are they? Because you see, no one was there to witness Krishna's tears in the eyes at this point in the Leela. Usually, little children will make sure they have tears in their eyes when someone's watching so the child can get what he or she wants. But no one was watching. Yashoda Mai was at the stove, wasn't looking. Yet Krishna had tears in his eyes. So it could be a show, these tears, or it could be that he was so much entering into the bhava, the emotions of the scene, that he displayed real tears. He's really into the Leela, in other words. Try to understand that. Mm. Those of you who are mothers or who know mothers, you also know that children cry with false tears when they don't get what they want. But Krishna didn't stop there. He didn't stop simply by shedding tears as a small child does. He took a stone and, without making any sound, he put a hole in the pot, the churning pot. See the churning pot, the clay pot, and a stick goes in the top, and that's what, and there's a rope, and that's how Yashoda Mai is churning, making butter. So little Krishna was very expert. He didn't make any sound. He put a hole in the pot. And then went into a storeroom. And in that storeroom, his mischief continued. He began eating butter from pots hanging from the ceiling. He did that by climbing on top of a mortar for grinding spices. The acharyas say that he started eating the butter because he was hungry or angry. Take your pick. Again, how is it that the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be hungry? He's hungry for Mother Yashoda's affection. He's really amplifying, expanding the childhood pastimes. This same mortar for grinding spices that Krishna will turn upside down and stand on to reach the butter pots hanging from the ceiling. This is the same mortar for grinding spices that Mother Yashoda is going to tie him up, bind him to. So now she returns to where she left Krishna, where she put him down. And she doesn't see him. And she sees the container of yogurt that she was churning. The container is broken. So she had no doubt. This is the work of Krishna. And she appreciated. She touched her forefinger to her nose and was laughing. She's laughing, yes, but that doesn't stop her from disciplining or trying to discipline her child. She knew it was him. The hole in the pot was made so expertly with such skill. And she knew it's possible he's angry because I put him down. So she laughed because she concluded that he's run away in fear. Especially, I know this because in the neighboring room, the adjacent room, the storeroom, I hear the sound of moving pots and ankle bells. So now you're going to have detective work in Brudge. She's going to quietly, very carefully start her pursuit. She's walking. Sanatan Goswami says she's walking on her tiptoes. She wants to catch him red-handed, or should we say blue-handed or white-handed, because there'll be so much butter and cream in his hands. Because of the hole in the pot, there was yogurt flowing everywhere. And meanwhile, she could track Krishna down because of his butter smeared footprints. This is an essential part I like to mention of detective work by Yashoda Mai. She followed the footprints and she was very careful to approach him from behind so that she could apprehend him, catch him. What was he doing? He was now sitting on the upside down wooden mortar for grinding spices and was feeding the monkeys with yogurt and butter. So he knew what he was doing. He's really in the Leela of a child, 100%. So he's looking all around with anxiety as he feeds the monkeys. He knows I could be chastised by my mother for this. So she's trying to sneak up to him. She's smiling. She sees him stealing butter as she's tiptoeing very slowly to catch him. Crows also enter the room and they see, uh-oh, there's going to be some chastisement. Let's get out of here. So the crows left. She had her clues how to track Krishna down. The sound of his jingling ankle bells, the footprints smeared with yogurt, and some noises. So that's all she needed to know for tracking Krishna down. She knew what room to go to. You can start to feel the fear that Krishna has as he's looking this way and that way. Mother Yashoda doesn't immediately enter that particular room. She stands right in the doorway, hidden behind a wall, and cranes her neck around. and she's watching him, and she sees Krishna looking around in fear and analyzing. I need an escape route just in case. He's afraid of being beaten by his mother, even at this point, before she apprehends him. So she's tiptoeing without making any noise to catch him. Then he goes outside. He takes a back door to a solitary spot outside. He thinks, now I'll fool mother. So she's still approaching very quietly. So outside now, he's sitting on top of an overturned mortar and feeding the monkeys. And so now we have verse 2 of Damodara. Rudantamu nature yugmam vijantam karam bhuja yugmena satanka natram muhu swasa kampa shire kanka kanta stita grivam damodaram bhakti badam. So this number 2 verse is about the excellences of pastimes. The first verse we did last time is about the excellences of tattva, or the science of the Supreme. And remember, Namam Ishvaram Satchidanandarupam. Before anything else that you hear in Damodarastic, you have to understand the tattva, the science of the Supreme, that Damodar is the supreme controller with a body of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And his situation in Gokula is no ordinary material situation. He's in a special place, which is practically not different from Goloka. And if we have time, we'll go into Brihad Bhagavatamrita again tonight, where Narada Muni is explaining to Gopakumar the glories of Boma Vrindavan, earthly Vrindavan, and Krishna's appearance there, and how there's just a very slight difference between Boma Vrindavan, Gokul, and Goloka Vrindavan. What's that difference? You might want to know. Very slight. In Goloka Vrindavan, the eternal residents there can see Krishna all the time. All the residents of Goloka Vrindavan can do that. But in the earthly Vrindavan, only once every day of Brahma can everyone see Krishna in Gokul, Boma Vrindavan. Otherwise, except for that once in every day of Brahma appearance, only the most advanced devotees can see Krishna all the time in the unmanifest Vrindavan. Anyone can materially enter the material film covering the spiritual Boma Vrindavan. But to actually experience the real Vrindavan on earth requires spiritual entrance, spiritual qualification. The advanced souls can see Krishna there, even though the pastimes are unmanifest. Anyone else cannot see. But when Krishna displays his manifest pastimes in Boma Vrindavan once every day of Brahma, everyone can see, even though they may not know what they're looking at. Still, everyone can see. Kamsa could see. Janna could see. Bakasura could see, but they didn't know what they were looking at until, and then they were finished. Whereas in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna is visible all the time. That's the only difference between Gokula and Goloka. You'll make a mistake to think that there's any other difference. And especially, Sanatana Goswami explains in Brihad Bhagavatamrita that in Gokul, in earthly Vrindavan, there are special pastimes that Krishna doesn't show in Goloka. But let's get back to Krishna running from Mother Yashoda. So the first verse of Damodarastik tells us that Paramishtam Achanta To Drutya Gopya. She caught him from behind. This is inconceivable. As Bhagavatam explains, the greatest yogis vying to enter the effulgence, the jyoti of the Supreme Lord, through their austerities and penances, they can't reach him. And they're just chasing the effulgence. But Mother Yashoda, as the perfect bhakti yogi, catches him, apprehends him like a law enforcement officer catching a fleeing crook. She catches him from behind. Actually, as Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport, yogis cannot reach Krishna, but for pure devotees like Mother Yashoda, Krishna is already caught. Think about that. He's already caught by her bhakti. And his being afraid of his mother's stick is so significant. You may recall Queen Kunti talking about it in the first canto. Bhaya Bhavanaya Statasya. Yogis are afraid of Krishna, and Krishna is afraid of Mother Yashoda's stick. How inconceivable is that? So this apprehending of Krishna is so important. But now in verse 2, we see what's happening when Krishna is captured. What is he seeing? Let's try to focus on this. Let's zoom in on this situation. What is little Krishna seeing? A stick in his mother's hand for whipping him. So he's got to respond because he doesn't want to be chastised. He doesn't want to be punished. So with two eyes, the tears are coming. And with his two lotus hands, the lotus hands rubbing the lotus eyes, like children do sometimes. You see them crying, and with both hands, they're rubbing their eyes. So Krishna is the perfect child, and he's doing that. He's rubbing with his lotus hands, his lotus eyes. And therefore, the eye decorative, the ointment, the mascara is starting to run down his face. Not creating a mess, but creating even more beauty. And Satanka Netram, his eyes are fearful. Please note that. He knows his mother has the greatest affection for him. So, in that way, he had no fear. But at the same time, he's relishing the Leela. He's relishing the pastime. He had never seen, Jiva Goswami said he has never seen his mother with a stick in her hand, potentially for punishing him. This is why he tried to flee before she caught him. He understood the situation when she began to track him down, and he took off running. A detail, in case you're interested, is that he ran to the main gate of the house. This is before she caught him, knowing many people had gathered there by the Yamala Arjun trees, which will play a great role soon. He had it figured out. If I run to where the main gate is, and there'll be lots of people, and maybe my mother won't chastise me because there are too many people watching. But Mother Yashoda knew on this particular day, everyone's already gone away from the main gate. So she knew nothing is going to stop me. Again and again, the Shastra makes us understand that what you're hearing can't be understood by the greatest yogis. This being able to catch Krishna directly. Don't underestimate what you're hearing. The greatest metaphysical scholars, the greatest yogis and mystic sages, they can't understand this. But here you are, relishing what is beyond the comprehension of the greatest yogis, gyanis, so forth. You know the beautiful scenario of her chasing Krishna. Her hair became loose, the flowers were falling from her hair as if following behind her as she ran. She was able to catch Krishna, and actually without difficulty. She was running for a while, so much so that Shukadeva Goswami says she had to reduce her speed, but she caught him without difficulty. She caught him by her love and affection. This is the perfection of Vatsalya Prem, parental love of Krishna. And then you have the scene described in verse 2 of Damodara. Krishna's really pouring it on in terms of his drama. He's really into it now. He's really into it. He's breathing rapidly. His body is shaking so much that the pearl necklaces around his neck are also shaking. His tears have mixed with the ointment around his eyes, and he's rubbing his eyes again and again. So Mother Yashoda grabs one of his hands. Remember, he was rubbing both eyes with both hands. She grabs one of his hands and she's got a stick in her other hand, one hand holding his hand and a stick in her other hand. Krishna does not want to be chastised. Although he started this whole Leela because he wanted to feel the deep affection of his mother through chastisement. But even though he wants it, he's deepening the whole experience by trying to convince her, you're terrifying me. You're terrifying me. And all she's doing is showing the stick in her hand. So Krishna admits, I'm an offender. And he begins to cry like an ordinary child. The acharyas point out that Mother Yashoda starts thinking, it's not good child psychology if my child is so afraid of me. So she put down the stick, and with words, she began to rebuke Krishna. I'm going to bind you so you can't commit further activities of mischief, and you can't play with your playmates. So let's go over some of the amazing and inconceivable paradoxes of this Leela. Number one, she catches Krishna, who can't be caught by the greatest yogis. Number two, she scolds Krishna, the same Krishna who's always praised by even Brahma and Shiva. She's scolding him. And number three, with that stick, she instilled fear in Krishna, the one who instills fear in time and death personified. She's instilling fear in him. And she starts scolding him verbally. Oh, friend of the monkeys, pot breaker, butter thief. Whose house are you going to break into today to steal? I will now bind you so you can't go and steal and eat butter with your friends. Aren't you afraid of being beaten with this stick? So she lifted the stick. She actually lifted the stick as if she's going to beat him, but she knew she would never do it. Now, whether as Krishna is rubbing his eyes, is he doing it to produce more tears, increase the show, or is he trying to wipe the tears away? These are nectarian details which you can think about eternally. He wanted to frighten him so that he would stop his mischief. That's why she was verbally scolding him, monkey lover, thief. I won't give you any more butter. I'll tie you up in the house so you can't go anywhere and play. No more playing with your friends for you. This is just for a short time, though. When she saw that her little son had become too much afraid, she threw the stick away. And therefore, she switched to modus operandi number two, tie him up. Because she had housework to do, all for Krishna's pleasure. And she was worried. He's so restless, he may just run off into the forest. So therefore, after she threw the stick away, she began the binding process, which we'll discuss in our next class. But now let's go to Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Let's hear about Goloka, Gokul, the glories of both. The glories are such that Narada Muni is trembling with ecstasy in talking about it. Remember, we ended last week, or the last time we talked from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, about how Ayodhya is a special part of Vaikuntha, yet nothing compares to Goloka because of the way Krishna can express himself in Goloka that he can't in Vaikuntha, Ayodhya. He can become subservient to his devotees' love. As Narada Muni explains, in Goloka, the dealings between the Lord and his devotees increase their mutual love in a way not possible in Vaikuntha, the abode of supreme opulence, Parama Aishvarya. Now remember, you may, Narada Muni had told Gopakumar that Goloka lies far away from Vaikuntha. Why? He's not talking in terms of physical distance. There's no time or space, material time or space in the spiritual world. So then how is Goloka far away? It's far away in terms of the need for non-reverential bhakti. It is simply that the Supreme Lord cannot behave with his devotees in Vaikuntha with the same familiarity as in Goloka. So even though Ayodhya and Dwarka resemble Vaikuntha and actually are secret portions of Vaikuntha, they're still more or less characterized by the basic Vaikuntha mood of reverence for the Supreme Lord's supremacy. So in the ranking, Dwarka is far superior to Ayodhya, and Ayodhya is far superior to other Vaikuntha planets. But neither of the two can compare to Goloka, because in Goloka, Krishna is free to subordinate himself fully to the control of his devotees' love. And this control of his devotees' love is what you're seeing in the Damodara Leela. Krishna wants to taste that. Therefore, he allowed Mother Yashoda to capture him, he whom the greatest yogis can get nowhere near to. So Sanatana Goswami explains that only in Goloka can the Lord and his devotees enjoy pastimes in which the servants and the served equally dominate one another. To understand Goloka, and then by extension to understand Gokul, Boma Vrindavan, We need to understand the triumph of sweetness, which creates a special type of enjoyment. There is some difficulty to understand Goloka. What to speak of Gokul? Because the opulence of Goloka looks simple. In fact, it can, in some ways, resemble an ordinary place of the material world. But then we have to know something about sweetness. And because of that sweetness, Krishna is able to display the maximum beauty, personality, and sportiness. Only a few privileged souls can understand this. There in Goloka, Krishna can show pastimes constantly that are never seen anywhere else. There you can see him stealing the heart of everyone with, again, those three things: beauty, personality, and pastimes. Please keep that in mind: beauty, personality, and pastimes. So we've understood now that Goloka is higher than Vaikuntha because of its excellences: beauty, personality, and pastimes. Then, guess what? Gokul, the direct expansion of Goloka on Earth, is also greater than Vaikuntha. Narada Muni explains that. As he says this, Narada Muni is criticizing his tongue. He's expressing himself to Gopakumar. My tongue is itching to speak. It's too bold. My tongue is just itching to talk about the glories of Boma Vrindavan, earthly Vrindavan. I can't check my tongue. What's hidden in my heart deeply is starting to come out. I haven't discussed this with anyone before. So he seems like he's criticizing his own tongue, but in fact, what his tongue is itching to do is nothing negative. It's revealing the eagerness to glorify Krishna, something we should all aspire for. So now, in preparation for hearing the glories of Boma Vrindavan, the manifestation of Goloka on earth, we're going to hear the glories of Golokanath, the Lord of Goloka, because remember, Gokul, Boma Vrindavan, is an extension of Goloka. So therefore, you hear about the Lord of Goloka. And then you can hear about the most confidential glories of Boma Vrindavan. But as I said, first we need to appreciate the super excellence of the Lord of Goloka, and then see how that projects into Gokul, Boma Vrindavan on earth. Krishna has his own program. to satisfy his own desires. And he has his own eagerness. He wants to taste the pleasures of brain that is, you could say, turbocharged. One thing that Narada Muni is going to explain to Gopakumar is that when Swayam Bhagavan comes, all the different expansions and incarnations come with him. That means that the Lord of Vaikuntha suddenly abandons Vaikuntha and his other abodes. Narada Muni explains this. He said, Gopakumar, you've already experienced that when you were in Vaikuntha. You already experienced that sometimes Narayan went missing. So Narada Muni is explaining that when the Lord suddenly abandons Vaikuntha and his other abodes, he abandons his paraphernalia, his people. He abandons his supreme Vaikuntha power and even leaves behind Mahalakshmi. Leaves behind, Narada Muni says, servants like me, he leaves us behind. Neglecting us all, Narada Muni says. He goes to the material world. So Narada Muni is setting you up for understanding there's something unique going on in Gokul. Don't downplay Gokul. Don't minimize Gokul. Something's happening in Boma Vrindavan that even the Lord of Vaikuntha leaves everything behind in Vaikuntha and merges within Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, along with the other expansions and incarnations. Just think of the opulence of Vaikuntha, the ornaments, palaces, thrones, all left behind. Even Mahalakshmi and the eternal servitors of Vaikuntha, not invited. Even though they're so devoted to Lord Narayan, they're not invited to Boma Vrindavan, to those Leelas. So Narada Muni explains that to enjoy a happiness unobtainable in any other association, Krishna sports freely in Boma Vrindavan with the Brijbasis. And Sanatana Goswami reminds us that the earthly Gokula sometimes displays perfections not found even in Goloka in the spiritual sky. And we're not talking about Vaikuntha, we're talking about Goloka, yet in the earthly Gokul, Krishna displays sometimes perfections you won't even find in Goloka, the topmost portion of the spiritual sky. So Narada Muni is whetting our appetite. We want to know more about what's going on here. We discussed how Lord Narayan sneaks away from Vaikuntha to visit the material world. We discussed how Gopakumar has witnessed this during his visiting of Vaikuntha before he is where he is now. You might ask, why do some people then, some devotees focus on Mahavishnu or this expansion of the Lord, that expansion of the Lord? Narada Muni explains that these sages have their particular object of meditation, and that's what they're familiar with. So therefore, they talk about the Lord of Vaikuntha or Mahavishnu or Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, Naranarayan. They realized from their meditation a particular form of the Lord. And as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita, technically they're not wrong because all incarnations dwell within Krishna. So if you call Krishna Narayan or Mahavishnu, you're not wrong. You're just not completely in-depth correct. Where is Narada Muni? Where are speaking Narada Muni and Gopakumar? Where are they speaking? They're at the house of Uddhava. So Narada Muni wants us to understand that the location where they're speaking is very important. They're in Dwarka in the spiritual world. But Uddhava is not an ordinary Dwarkavasi. He's Krishna's close associate. And he functions sometimes as Krishna's advisor. And remember, it's Uddhava who Krishna sent to Vrindavan to study the love of the gopis and come back and give a report. So Narada Muni is pointing out, right now we're speaking in Dwarka at the house of Uddhava, who's very dear to the residents of Braj. And he says, Gopakumar, you're from Braj also. Therefore, I can speak all these confidential things. I can speak freely because everyone in the audience is fit to hear such confidential topics. They have some special appreciation for the sweetness of Brajabhumi. So now we approach Narada Muni's discussing the excellences of Braj Bhumi. There are various factors. Opulences, mercy, beauty, sweetness of his qualities, and splendor of his pastimes, and his subservience to his devotees. These are details that Narada Muni will explain at length as he discusses the glories of Krishna and Gokula. So we'll go into that in coming discussions. Opulences, mercy, beauty, the sweetness of his excellent qualities, the splendor of his pastimes, and his subservience to his devotees. What you're going to hear is that Narada Muni is going to try to do all this in the order I just presented to you, but other priorities are going to dominate. The last thing he says is subservience to his devotees, but that is irresistible. So he starts talking about it out of order. He starts talking about the Damodara Leela, even though last on the list is subservience to his devotees. Before he talks about preceding items, he turns to the sweetness because, again, he's thinking Got to get to the sweetness. So you see the role of ecstasy in glorifying Krishna. Narayani had his original plan, but then the ecstasies take over. So we're going to go through them one by one. We'll go to the pastures of Nanda Maharaj, where we'll see opulence, opulence in cowherd pastures. We look forward to this in coming discussions. What about us situated here in the material world? Bhakti knowledge involves knowledge of the material world and spiritual world. What's blocking us from relishing this Krishna Katha? It's what I like to call the tedious process of Dehantara. Dehinosmin yata dehe. The tedious process of changing bodies, taking a material body, dropping it, and accepting another material body. This is boring. If you can get to the root of your material dissatisfaction, you'll find boredom there. Same old, same thing. I like how Srila Prabhupada explains that tedious process of changing bodies, Dehantara. My body is American. My senses are American. My duty is to serve America. You can insert whatever nationality you like. My body is Kiwi. My senses are Kiwi. My duty is to serve Kiwi. Whatever. Mexico, Ecuador, Kazakhstan. Throw in whatever you want in the blank. Think about it. It sounds so simple, but the meaning is extraordinarily deep. Having a body means you have a bag of senses. And with that bag of senses, you consider that you have various duties, affiliations, goals in life. Meanwhile, the material world is going its own way, inflicting upon you various transitory experiences of so-called happiness and so-called distress. Another point that Srila Prabhupada explains is that this world is such that even Devaki had troubles from her own brother. So many people like to say today that the world is very troubled. I always point out, guess what? It's always been like that. Just in this part of the world, the trouble may appear less. And in another part of the world, the trouble appears more. And then vice versa. But even if you think the troubles of the world are new for you, I explained last time about the wet cow dung and the dry cow dung. I won't repeat it. But think about Devaki. As Prabhupada writes, this world is such that even Devaki had troubles from her own brother. And her husband, Vasudeva, thought, let me make a deal with Kamsa so that in time he'll forget his envy. But Kamsa never forgot. Thinking that Kamsa would forget is like trying to grease down the curved tail of a dog. No matter how much grease you put on the dog's tail, so it stays down, it'll pop up again. So similarly, Vasudeva did his best to save his wife, He made a deal. He tried to buy some time, hoping that Kamsa would forget about his insane envy or something would happen. But Kamsa never forgot. Another point I've been meditating on today. What does it mean to be material? Does it mean that I want certain things? I want material satisfaction. I want material happiness. I want material achievement, material entertainment. I like this definition from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who says, I am material because I have pride, the Sanskrit word mada. I have pride that I can gain pleasure by my body, senses, and mind. I find that very deep. I am material because I have pride that I can gain pleasure through my body, senses, and mind. What do you think about that? And I stumbled upon one quotation, a masterpiece of ignorance that I had filed away somewhere. It's considered a famous statement. Be ready for it. This is considered so eloquent, so deep. It goes like this. This is my meaning to life. When I meet my non existent God, I shall say to him, my non existent God, non existent God, you gave me talents and it's been a hell of a lot of fun using them. Thank you. I need nothing more. What do you think? I don't mind dying. I need nothing more. I need to acknowledge no supreme being. I need to acknowledge no supreme rules and laws. I expressed myself in this lifetime with my talents, my skills, my abilities. I had a chance to do my thing. Thank you, non existent God. I don't need anything more in life. Crazy conditions all talk like this until the miseries of existence turn them upside down. And that will happen without a doubt. The idea is that you'll die peacefully knowing you had a chance to do your thing and show your stuff. Forget it. It doesn't work like that. Actually, Bhakti Yoga recognizes that we want to be free of rules and regulations. Think about that. We've got this tendency, this psychology to think that how can I avoid rules and regulations, whether political, governmental, economic, societal. The tendency is there because that's the nature of the spirit soul. When you're liberated from the grip of Maya, then there are no rules or regulations. So our bhakti mission is to show and teach how to become liberated from rules and regulations. But as long as you're within the jail of the material body and the material world, you can't break rules and regulations. You must follow. If you don't follow, there are massive problems. So people in all kinds of ways actually would rather avoid rules and regulations. They hate it. The government says you have to do this. The government says you have to do that. But just think from your very appearance in this world, you're operating under rules and regulations. As a human being, you had to come to this world through a mother and father. So I like how Srila Prabhupada puts it. Can you avoid that? Can you say, oh, without a mother and father, I will come? You can't do that. So from the very beginning of this lifetime, there are rules and regulations. You had to take birth in a certain way. You can't say, why do I need to come through a mother and father? I'll come my own way. You can't do that. You have to follow the rules and regulations. It's amazing. We never think of this stuff, do we? I remember in Mumbai, 1976, Srila Prabhupada had just given his umpteenth example about how you're not the body. And then he asked devotees, how is it that I can always come up with newer and newer examples about this point? He then said, it's because I'm always thinking about it. So there are rules and regulations involving our birth. You have to come through a mother and father. What to speak of rules and regulations about old age, death. All these are rules and regulations. We don't think about it in that way. Oh, old age, well, it's something that happens. Death, I'd rather not think of it. Disease, yeah. But these are rules and regulations. So what I'm getting at is we should see that in our heart, we want to avoid rules and regulations. And Bhakti recognizes that. You don't want to be ruled, even though we're totally under the control of our senses. So real life is freedom from rules and regulations. And in the topmost portion of the spiritual world, Goloka, and its extension in the material world, Brahma Vrindavan, that's what life is about. Just spontaneous attraction for Krishna. The only rule is how to increase the love between Krishna and his associates. And life in Brahma Vrindavan can look bewildering to someone without knowledge, because Krishna does extraordinary things there in the sweetest way. He manifests his inconceivable powers in such a way that the sweetness is always increased in Vrindavan. To the ordinary vision, life in Goloka looks ordinary. Festivals, eating, celebrating, cows, trees, plants, rivers. It seems so ordinary, but there is the Parama Madhurya, the supreme sweetness. In other words, Krishna's Achintya Shakti reveals itself in terms of unlimited sweetness, whereas in Vaikuntha, it's all about opulence, awe, and reverence. So please think about this. This is why in our heart we want to be free, but you can't be free in the material world, in the material body. You're always compromised. You're always hemmed in. Someone's always shoving on you something you don't want. You don't like it? Get out of the material world. Don't take another material body. That should be your focus. Tattva deham. Aiti mam eti, so Arjuna. So we'll stop here and perhaps someone has some questions. We've covered Goloka, Vaikuntha, Boma Vrindavan, the material world. So we're open for questions now. Ita Govinda.
Hare Krishna Gurudev, thank you for the class. You said that the earthly Vrindavan is more opulent than Gokula because Krishna displays special pastimes there.
Earthly Vrindavan is so cool. You mean?
Sorry, it's more opulent than Goloka. Yeah, sorry about that. But
no, not exactly. I said that in the earthly Gokula, Krishna displays special pastimes that you don't even see in Goloka. But what I did also say is that Goloka is actually more opulent than Vaikuntha, as well as Boma Vrindavan. Earthly Vrindavan is more opulent than Vaikuntha. But you have to know what that opulence is. Okay?
So I was just wondering, why does Krishna favor the earthly Vrindavan over the Vrindavan in the spiritual world? Why does he display special pastimes in the earthly Vrindavan?
You have to ask him. Childhood pastimes happen only in the earthly Vrindavan. Mother Yashoda's love in Goloka is eternally there in Vatsalya Prem. Her love doesn't change in Goloka, but it just Krishna as a child having his pastimes is only in Boma Vrindavan. He's got a right to do what he wants the way he wants it, you know? Looks like Dinanath has a question. Okay.
I wanted to ask, how does a pure devotee of the Lord like Srila Prabhupada turn a place into a holy place?
How does a pure devotee turn what seems to be an ordinary place into a holy place? By the pure glorification of Krishna. Kirti kurvanti tirtani. This is what Yudhisthira Maharaj told Vidura upon Vidura's return after being out on pilgrimage. He said, wherever you are, that is a place of pilgrimage.
That's where I got it from.
Very good. So you can turn your house into a place of pilgrimage by always saturating it, drowning it in glorification of Krishna. So you ask your mother and father how to do that.
I wouldn't expect this house to be a holy place, though.
I would expect it. I insist that.
Thank you.
So you tell your mother and father that you all need to make a plan how to turn your house into a holy tirtha, a place of pilgrimage. I think they'll be very happy to hear that from you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Goroy, you have your hand up?
Hare Krishna Gurudev. Thank you. My question is, as we're hearing about this information, is that mean that this is our legacy, that that's actually our destination to be a
What
part
is-
of it? Yeah.
What are you asking about?
I'm asking that as we're hearing this information, this exclusive information about these pastimes and the rarity of this information, does that mean that that is our qualification for entering these pastimes?
Our qualification is Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And we have a chance. So we should maximize our possibilities by approaching Radha and Krishna through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have a chance. We have a great opportunity. What we do with that opportunity, that we have to see. We've got a ticket to get inside the arena. Now, do you drop the ticket or do you use it, get inside? Just like during the famous Chaitanya Charitamrita marathon, after it concluded, the inconceivable marathon, Prabhupada wrote the devotees involved that by this effort, you will all go back to Godhead. Now, if you look around, you see that not everyone who was part of that crew has gone the distance. So what happened? Prabhupada said, by this effort, you'll all go back to Godhead. He put the ticket in your hand, but if you drop the ticket, what can be done? You have to do your part. So by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we can hear. Now, what will we do? That is the question. Any other questions? Rachel, you have your hand up?
Yes, Maharaj, Hare Krishna. I have a question because you just said the definition about material, because I have pride for what I don't remember, but I remember in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it said just for envy, just because the envy, we stay in the material world. So how to understand?
I explained, and thank you for joining our class from Shenzhen in China. I quoted something from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, great Vaishnavacharya. He says, I am material because I have pride that I can gain pleasure by my body, senses, and mind. Isn't that a wonderful definition of who's a real materialist? We don't think in this way. We think, oh, this is normal. My body, my senses, my mind. What are they going to do for me? I've got to grab onto some pleasure. That's pride. And therefore, we're classified as material because of that pride. There's something else you asked?
Oh, another thing is that because in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that because of the envy, we stay in the material world. So I don't understand this very clearly.
We're envious of Krishna. The more you know about Krishna, the more you'll see our problem of envy. We're imitating Krishna and failing. We work so hard just to imitate Krishna. I am the enjoyer. I am the controller.
Oh.
I have my relationships, my rasas. That's why we're in the material world. as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, Ichcha Dvesha Samuddena Dvandva Mohena Bharata. All living entities are born into this world overcome by the desire to imitate Krishna and to rebel against Krishna's instructions. That is the psychology of the conditioned soul. I want to imitate Krishna as a supreme enjoyer, supreme proprietor, and I want to rebel against following Krishna's instructions. Okay, you got it?
Yeah. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All right, I don't see any more. So I thank you all for your kind association, as always. We will meet again the next time. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.